Um, Good afternoon, everyone of Spanish United. This is Enrique. Today I have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience?
My name is Ronald Dauzat. I'm the headmaster over at Ribet Academy in Glass Hill Park area.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ronald. I truly appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and as we spoke through previous phone calls and text messages, today's topic has to do with private education and public school, and low income people that are interested in getting a private income. I mean, not private income, a private education, but they don't go about it. So I would like to discuss about what are like the differences between a private and public education, and how low income people can benefit from private education, and what are the stigmas and myths from it, and what can be done for people that want to pursue a better education for their children.
That's fine. I can, I can only speak for Ribet because all the private schools, there's so many different types of private schools that people are looking at also. We're an independent private school, but there's also, of course, the religious, the parochial schools. You have the main ones are the Catholics, but you also have Protestant denominations also. You have different things that are going on in different ways with private schools. For us, we're a small private school in the Glass Hill Park area, and for ourselves, we're mostly a school that's dedicated to math and science and arts for the most part. Although we had good sports teams at different times, so there's different things going on. Is there something in particular you want me to discuss? What the difference between private and public?
Yes, like for example, when it comes like to a general academic education, would you say a private school is better in the sense that it's smaller classes, more individual attention from the teacher, or that type of thing? That's what the audience is curious about.
Those are basically the two biggest things. Actually, the first thing is that one is free and one costs money. That's the biggest thing with private education. We're a small private school. We don't get donations from the state. We don't get any money from the state. So all of anything that we take in is used for the students and pay for the teachers, pay for the property, pay for all of everything else that goes along with it. Since it's my school, we own the building, but we have to pay taxes, we have to pay payments, we have to do all of these other things. So those are the reasons that we have to collect tuition for. All of even the taxes that I pay, they go to supporting public schools. So that's a big thing that people don't think about. But for me, I think about it because I'm paying it. In a private school, basically you're going to have a smaller class size. In my private school, you're going to have a smaller class size, and you're going to have more attention paid to the students. The students, all of the teachers will know the student's name because you go from one class to the other, same teachers all the time. And so they're used to, it's more personalized toward the student itself as to what they're able to do. If they're coming from a private school in California, during the Obama administration, chucked its student goals as to what they were supposed to accomplish, everything there, and went to Common Core. Common Core is supposed to be an equalizer among all schools and all students, and if some public schools wanted to, they could add to the curriculum in their own way and enhance it more. Although what seems to have happened with Common Core is it stopped at a certain level, and schools don't always go forward with anything more public schools don't. We don't use Common Core. We use the standards that California had prior to the influx of Common Core. So for us, we tend to go deeper into the level of education. We don't use any of the Common Core books. We use either, when you get into middle and high school, you start to use older books, the books that were there that were subject to the standards previous to what the Common Core puts out. For example, of what we do, we use a math system called Singapore Math, which I consider it probably one of the best math systems in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken from the Chinese and the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore put it together, so it just sort of is called Singapore Math,
Right.
Because of that. But it has a different way of introducing concepts that makes it much simpler for the children to understand. So we start with it with kindergarten, and we use it through 5th grade. And what it does, it introduces concepts like set theory, where you have set theory that's that comes in 3rd grade in most schools. It's introduced in kindergarten, and it's something that's reiterated over and over again, and you learn more and more of it. So it puts the kids a couple of grade levels up. By the time they get to 5th grade, they know about what is supposed to be there in 7th grade. And then we go to pre-algebra, and then we go to algebra. And we use regular books. We don't use any kind of books that are dumbed down in any way. And we use the previous standards. So those are the type of things that I think distinguish private schools from public schools. Public schools are dealing mostly with Common Core, which stops at a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it's an equity situation, but for us, we want our kids to excel at everything. And when they excel at things, you have to give them things that are more, a little more harder each time that you give them something, so that they grow.
Right.
In education. For us, we try to get the kids as early as possible, so that they'll all be together and working on the same type of things. Those are very important to us. So what we try to do is, as the student grows, we give them the next thing that's harder and the next thing that's harder. And if they start early enough, they become used to it, and they don't think of it as getting harder. They just think of it as getting a little more complicated, but it's things that they can do, and it makes their confidence build up, and they're able to do more and more harder work.
Right.
That's the idea. The whole idea is to make them feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
Right. And I definitely agree, because one thing that I see with the public school system is that I've noticed that a lot of the books and the text that they use, especially when I was going back in the 90s, they were from 1980 or earlier, which a lot of it is outdated. A lot of the school buildings were converted gyms, and you had like 30 students per one teacher. So it's like you had teachers that were dealing with so many students. Some of them, they were not really learning. So it's like many teachers started to develop like a cynical attitude that, hey, if you graduate, great. If you don't graduate, that's fine too, because I'm gonna get my pension. And so I felt that, going to public school at that time, is that I felt that the teachers didn't care. And also, unfortunately, a lot of public schools tend to be political. Want to be my politicals, that they don't want to take accountability for their actions. So it's like, you have the students that were failing, and then the parents wanted to blame the teachers, and the teachers wanted to blame the parents, and then the principal or the board directors didn't want to take any responsibility. So one thing that I always tell my listeners, because I did do tutoring, I used to tutor students many years ago back in college, that there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher, meaning that the student is only gonna know what the teacher teaches them. So if the teacher teaches them something that's not good or not beneficial, the student's going to be set up for failure, because they are learning. So I believe that the parents and the teachers need to work together, meaning that it is not the parents' job to make sure that their children are learning in school. It's the teacher's job, and it's not the teacher's job to make sure that the children do their homework when they get home. Meaning that they have to work together. They have to have harmony, and
Hmm.
it's also not the principal or the board of directors' job to just throw mud at each other, at both the teachers and the parents. They both have to be like a judge. They listen to both sides, be impartial, and then to come up with solutions, because the students are the ones that are being failed. And I feel that that's letting a lot of kids just drop out of school and not be interested in learning, is because the children feel that they're not appreciated. So that's something that I feel that is failing the public school system within the state of California and within the United States, not just here. So I really believe that a lot of low income people will love to send their kids to like a private school, but a lot of them feel that they cannot afford it. So that comes to my next question when it comes to affordability and scholarships. So it's like, let's say if someone from a Hispanic community that's low income wants to send their kids to a private school so that way they could go to college and go to graduate school, like how can they come about that?
They can call any private school. Any private school will listen to them and they will give them the information. Uh, we take kids depending on what their needs are. We take sometimes, don't want to wind up with a huge amount of differentiation between students, but if your student has the ability to perform, you should be able to teach them. It might require for some students to go to a younger grade level. The way our student is set up, our teaching is set up, is if the student can perform at a higher level, what we will do is we'll put them in a higher level class. If they come in from a public school and they don't have the basis, we may have to put them in a lower class for, say, math or science or something, because they haven't been exposed to the concepts before. And if you give them the next step up and you haven't taught them the basics, they won't know what to do. So those are some of the things that we look at. When they're coming from a public school or something, before we take them, we test them, we see at what their levels would be, and then we'd go from there. But most private schools will listen to you. They'll let you come in. They'll put you at the level where they're supposed to be, depending on what they're doing. They just have to ask. They can call the front office of any of the schools, and people will listen to them. Some schools, we have enrollment that can happen anytime during the year, depending on where the student is coming from and what they know. We try to fit them into the class where they belong, at the level of education that they belong. But some schools only have schools that accept students at the beginning of the year. Private schools all have their own policies as to what they're doing for that. For our school, if you call, you tell me your child is having problems at the school they're at, whether they're problems with bullying or problems with the material, we'll let them come in. We'll test them. We'll tell the parents what level they are, and then if they're interested in coming still, we'll give them the tuition information. It depends. It's different on each grade level, elementary or middle or high school. So for us, if they decide they want to come in, we don't have like a full scholarship usually unless it's an unusual situation. We had some girl who was parking in our parking lot years ago, with her mom and sleeping overnight, and we took her in and we just sort of adopted her, and she wound up getting a scholarship to Stanford,
Oh,
which is a
wow.
very good. So
Yeah, that's an
she
Ivy League
had
university.
what's that?
That's an Ivy League university.
Yes, that's in. Well, it's on the West Coast. That's the only thing that doesn't make it quite.
Oh,
But
really? Okay.
it's a top school in the country. So it's a very good school. It's the Ivy League of the West.
Ah,
So
okay.
there you go. So but it depends on the situation of the family. What they do is if they are interested in coming in, we need a copy of their taxes. If they need financial aid, we need a copy of their taxes, see where they're at. If they're making below $60,000, we will cut the tuition in half for them. If they're making above, they fill out a form, and we would base the tuition based upon their income, how it works out on that.
Okay.
So that's the way it works for us.
All right. And then also another question I wanted to ask. A lot of people have asked me within my organization is that they believe that when it comes to like private school in general, like the ratio of low income people that are like of Hispanic descent tends to be very low. You know, like maybe like 5 or 6%. So from your school, like what would you say the ratio is? Would you say it's above 5%, lower than 6%? You know, from what you know.
For Hispanics,
That is correct.
usually the Hispanic is the largest percentage of the population at different times. I mean, it depends because we have a lot of international students also that are coming in from different countries: Brazil, China, Korea, Russia, Armenia, south of the border. It totally depends on what is going on that particular year. So some years the Hispanics will be in the majority because this is Los Angeles. They're in the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're taking students here, they're not necessarily going to be one race that's going to be the majority all the time. It changes depending on the number of students that come in.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
We look at things a bit different than most people. So what we're looking at more than anything else is whether they can do the work and how does it work out. You know, we have a very diverse population up to 2 years ago. Since then, excuse me, since the pandemic came in, our international population had to drop down because for the last 2 years, basically they weren't allowed into the country for the most part. So it goes up and down depending on the students themselves and who's allowed into the country. For the last 15 years since I've had the school, we've seen different nationalities come in, and they become the majority for a time, and then they don't. This year we have about a quarter of them, or actually we got about a quarter Hispanic, a quarter, I would say about a quarter Chinese, and then we have some Koreans, we have some Armenians that came from their war. We took them in this year. You have the regular white population, you have the black population also, African American population. So we have a little bit of everything, but we have a very small school this year. Mm-hmm. Every year, usually we're between 300, for the last 7 years, 8 years, it's been between 300 and 200, and then last year, because of the pandemic, none of our international students could come in, and it was a mess, and our population went down to 100, and this year, our population right now is just in the 50s.
Oh, wow, that's very small.
So For us, it's a little difficult because as the owners, we just absorb the cost.
Mm-hmm.
We're not closing up or doing anything else, so we absorb the cost and we take the kids on. So that's the way it goes. For the high school, it's 17,900, which is low for things that are not parochial,
Mm-hmm.
not religious schools. We have 7 classes. Every day you have math, science, English, history, PE, and then you get 2 electives. So ours is different. When you go to a parochial school, you probably have 2 classes for religion
Right.
of some type each day. So that's a little different. So we're doing things that are not the same in each school.
Right.
So you have to look and see what is the school you want. I'm a Christian, but I don't put it out there and say, oh, we're a big Christian school.
Right. Right.
Our main purpose is to get whatever kid comes to my school is to get him into the best college possible. And so everything that they're taught is basically college prep that's preparing them for this. In a public school, they're preparing them to graduate. Some public schools are better than others, and they're preparing them to graduate and go to college. Some are just preparing them to get through school. It depends on the school that you choose.
Right. And it also depends on the area as well where the school is.
Yes. If you're in a public school in Beverly Hills, you're usually doing pretty good because the families there contribute to the schools a lot.
Right.
We don't really have that much contributions that actually come to the school above tuition. And for us, we try to keep everything at a high level of education so that the kids will be able to transfer to a really good school when they get out. If they get out with good grades from us, the schools that know us, the colleges that know us, they want those kids if those kids have good grades. Those are the big things that they're looking for. They're looking for kids that can actually do the work, that are not going to come in and come into a college and then plunk out after the first year. They're looking for the people that can come in and do not need remedial courses. And unfortunately, when you look at some of the public colleges and junior colleges, when they go into those, they need remedial classes for math and some for science and things like that they have to take to get up to speed. I know that California has stopped calling them remedial and are just adding them as classes now, which means that they don't have to get credit for those.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different type of thing. If it's a remedial class, the colleges don't give you credit until you get up to the college level math and things along those lines.
Right.
That
it makes perfect sense. Like the reason why I asked that, because I have toured different like private schools in the country in different cities, and one thing that I've always noticed is that you have a very high Asian population or Indian population, like from India, but the private school enrollment of Hispanic students tends to be very low. So that's one thing that I'm trying to encourage with my listeners and my people from my organization, is to encourage higher learning, because I feel that when people have the education, or at least have some form of vocational training, they will have more options of getting better employment, and they could increase their income, because when people have a basic education or no education, unfortunately they're not going to get the highest paying job, and that just creates the cycle of poverty that unfortunately many people are not able to break. So I think it's very important that the people start making their priorities where it needs to be, and try to focus on a better future for their children, because I feel that children are the biggest resource that a society has. And if you don't start like you said from the bottom level, we're just setting them up for failure, and economically and socially, a society cannot function. So I really
True.
appreciate that we had this talk. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ron. I truly appreciate it. I'm sorry
I
about
just
the.
want,
I'm sorry.
sorry, I just have one thing to say before you go, because
Sure.
you were saying that it's for Hispanic. One of the things that we do here specifically is we don't really discuss a person's race so much as for what they're doing. Different people have different cultures. Like, so for the Chinese, they're taught from the very beginning how hard everything is, and they're going to be doing math, and they start out and they do everything. But I'm going to say the Hispanics, blacks, whites, whatever, they're all working toward the same goal while they're here. So we don't sort of separate them by race or anything else.
Right.
And basically, what happens is it's not like you have a competition, but there's a level that people rise to when they see other people working hard at it. And all of the kids that we've had, I mean, it's 15 years I've been here, and since 2006, and that is one of the things that kids will rise to when they see the other persons being able to do it, and they realize, even if they're coming from a different school at a different level, and they work their way up, they get it within themselves that they can do it if they try. They just have to have that feeling of being able to want to do it themselves. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you at
No,
the
it's
end.
not a problem. It's not a problem. But I really appreciate that final note. But yes,
Okay.
but like I said, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you so much. I know that we started off with a little bit of technical difficulties, but where there's a will, there's a way, as I say. So I found the way, and I was able to do the interview, even though it was not how I wanted it to be, but I was able to get it done.
No problem.
All right then.
It's all right.
Thank you so much, Ron. Have yourself a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye.
Have a good